Every day, God's transformative power is at work in our lives, shaping us and preparing us for the extraordinary. It's easy to feel caught up in the routine of life, thinking that things will always be the same. But my friends, God is constantly doing a new thing in our hearts and in our lives. He takes what is ordinary and makes it extraordinary, and He invites us to be a part of this transformation. The key is to embrace what God is doing and to trust in His process, even when we cannot see the full picture. When He says in Isaiah 43:19, "Behold, I will do a new thing, now it shall spring forth." It is a call to look beyond our current circumstances and see that something new is on the horizon. It is an invitation to step into the unknown with faith, trusting that God's plans are far greater than anything we could imagine. The new thing God is doing may not always fit into our neat and tidy plans, but it will always be for our good and His glory. Type 555. If you believe in Jesus. God's transformative power often begins in places where we can't immediately see the change happening. Much like how a seed is planted in the soil, hidden beneath the surface, the work of transformation is often quiet and unseen at first. We might not see the results immediately, but God is at work behind the scenes, preparing us for something greater. His plans are always perfect, even when they feel uncertain or uncomfortable. Take a moment to reflect on the story of Ruth. She left everything she knew, her homeland, her family, to follow Naomi into an uncertain future. It might have seemed like an act of loyalty, a simple decision driven by love and care for Naomi. But God was using that journey to position Ruth for a destiny she never could have imagined. The decision to go to a foreign land, to leave her comfort zone, was not just a random act of kindness. It was part of God's divine plan. In Ruth 2:1-2, we see how God guided her to Boaz's field, placing her exactly where she needed to be. Little did Ruth know that moment would be the first step toward being part of the lineage of Christ. God was preparing her heart and her future, just as He prepares us today for the new things He is doing in our lives. Type Amen if you are ready to forgive, trusting that God will handle what's been done to you. Change often requires stepping out into the unknown. It might feel uncomfortable. It might even feel like you're walking away from everything familiar. But this is the place where God's transformational work happens. When we surrender our plans and desires to Him, He is free to shape us and lead us into His perfect will. Just like a tree's roots grow deep into the ground, God's work of preparation in our lives goes deep into our hearts. This process may be hidden for a while, but it is strengthening us for the change that is to come. Every trial, every challenge is part of this preparation. God is building a firm foundation in our lives, so when the new thing comes, we will be able to stand firm and thrive in it. It may feel like you're in a wilderness right now, but God promises in Isaiah 43:19 that He will make a road in the wilderness and rivers in the desert. There is no place too dry, no path too rugged, where God cannot make a way for you. As we embrace God's work in our lives, we must remember that the process of transformation is not always quick or easy. It requires patience, trust, and sometimes even waiting. But in this waiting, God is doing something beautiful. Just as a seed needs time to grow, we need time to mature and align ourselves with God's plans. His timing is always perfect, and every detail matters to him. He is not in a rush, and neither should we be. Type 1111 if you trust God's plan. Even when the road ahead seems uncertain or challenging, we can trust that God's guidance is leading us to something greater. He is preparing us for the new thing He is doing in our lives. So, my friends, don't be afraid of the unknown. Don't fear the unfamiliar. Trust that God is already at work, even in the moments you can't see. He is paving the way before you, clearing obstacles and opening doors that no one can shut. The new thing He is doing is just around the corner, and it will be more than you could have ever imagined. Remember, transformation often begins in small and quiet ways. It's in the subtle changes, the shifts in our hearts and minds, that God is preparing us for the extraordinary. As we align ourselves with His will, as we step out in faith, we begin to see His transformative power at work in our lives. God is not bound by our circumstances. He is not limited by the challenges we face or the fears that try to hold us back. His power is limitless, and He is constantly working behind the scenes, preparing the way for us to walk in His blessings. We are not alone on this journey. God goes before us, clearing the path, smoothing the rough places, and preparing us for the great things He has in store. Type Amen if you are ready to forgive, trusting that God will handle what's been done to you. As we step into this new day, let us embrace God's transformative power and trust in His preparation. Let us surrender our plans to Him and allow Him to lead us into the new thing He is doing. We may not always understand the process, but we can trust that every step is part of His perfect plan. I want to encourage you today, my friends, to look for the new thing that God is doing in your life. Don't be afraid to step into the unknown. Trust that God has already gone before you, making a way where there seems to be no way. You are not walking this journey alone. God is with you, guiding you and preparing you for the extraordinary. Now I invite you to open your heart to God's transformative power. Allow Him to do a new thing in your life today. Trust in His perfect plan, knowing that He is at work even when you can't see it. With God, all things are possible, and He is doing something beautiful in you. Let's trust Him fully and watch as He leads us into the extraordinary, one step at a time. God is at work in your life. You are being prepared for something amazing. Keep walking in faith, knowing that He who began a good work in you will bring it to completion. As we continue to reflect on the incredible power of God's transformation in our lives, let's remind ourselves that His ability to create something new is not just a one-time event. It is ongoing, constant, and available to us at every moment. The same God who parted the Red Sea, who raised Jesus from the dead, is the God who is working tirelessly in your life to bring about profound change. No situation is too difficult for Him to redeem. No heart is too far for Him to restore. Type Amen. If you are ready to forgive, trusting that God will handle what's been done to you, it's so easy to get caught up in the day-to-day struggles. and routines of life, and sometimes we forget that we have a God who is always at work behind the scenes, orchestrating everything for our good. There may be seasons when we feel stuck, as if we are waiting for something to change or shift. But God is preparing us for something so much bigger than what we can see in front of us. Every challenge, every obstacle is part of the refining process that brings us closer to the fullness of His purpose for our lives. When God says He is doing a new thing, He's not referring to a simple change or a temporary fix. He is talking about a profound transformation, a metamorphosis that will redefine who we are. This transformation may take time, and it may require us to step out in faith, but the results are always worth it. When we embrace the changes God is making, when we trust Him enough to let go of the old and embrace the new, we begin to see ourselves through His eyes. God's transformative power isn't confined to grand, miraculous moments alone. It is often in the small, everyday moments that we experience His work in the deepest ways. The way He guides our thoughts, the way He changes our desires, the way He aligns us with His will. This is the transformation that happens in the quiet spaces of our hearts. And just like a plant grows from a tiny seed to a tall tree, this transformation may seem small at first, but it will eventually bear great fruit. Consider the story of the Apostle Paul. Before his dramatic conversion on the road to Damascus, he was known for his persecution of Christians. He was a man of ambition and zeal, but his heart was completely misguided. But God saw something in Paul that no one else saw, and He transformed him from a fierce enemy of the faith to one of its most passionate apostles. This was a radical transformation, and it didn't happen overnight. Paul spent years learning, growing, and being shaped by God. But when the time came, he was used by God in extraordinary ways to spread the gospel to the ends of the earth. His life became a testament to God's ability to turn even the most broken and flawed into instruments of glory. It may feel like you're in a wilderness right now, but God promises in Isaiah 43:19 that He will make a road in the wilderness and rivers in the desert. There is no place too dry, no path too rugged, where God cannot make a way for you. As we embrace God's work in our lives, we must remember that the process of transformation is not always quick or easy. It requires patience, trust, and sometimes even waiting. But in this waiting, God is doing something beautiful. Just as a seed needs time to grow, we need time to mature and align. Type Amen if you are ready to forgive, trusting that God will handle what's been done to you. In the same way, God is not done with you yet. No matter where you've been, no matter what you've experienced, God is still working in you. He has a plan to use you in ways you never thought possible. Sometimes the transformation process can be uncomfortable because it requires us to let go of things we thought we needed or to face fears we've tried to avoid. But remember, God never leads us into a place where He cannot sustain us. His plans are always good, and His timing is always perfect. As we wait for the new thing to unfold, let us not grow weary or impatient. Trust that God's work in us is always for our benefit and His glory. Even when the path ahead seems uncertain or difficult, we can rest in the assurance that He is leading us to a place of greater purpose. Just as a potter molds clay, God is shaping us into vessels that will carry His glory and reflect His love. The beauty of God's transformative work is that it is not limited by our mistakes, our past, or our perceived shortcomings. He has the power to take broken pieces and make them whole. He has the power to take our ordinary, everyday lives and turn them into something extraordinary. And it's not about what we can do, but about what He can do through us. As we go through life, let's remember to stay open to the work that God is doing. The new thing He is creating in you may not always look like what you expected, but it will always be good. Embrace the changes, even the small ones, because they are leading you to something greater. Trust that God's hand is upon your life and that He is transforming you from the inside out. Type Amen if you are ready to forgive, trusting that God will handle what's been done to you. Every morning when we wake up, we are given a fresh opportunity to step into the new things God is doing. The past is behind us, and today is a new day filled with endless possibilities. God's mercies are new every morning, and His grace is sufficient for us in every situation. So let us walk into this new day with faith, knowing that God is already at work in our lives, preparing us for the extraordinary. God's transformative power is not just about big dramatic moments. It is about the everyday miracles that take place as He works in us and through us. Every moment of our lives is an opportunity for God to do something new. And when we surrender ourselves to Him, He takes our ordinary everyday moments and turns them into something extraordinary. Let us embrace the new thing God is doing in our lives today. Let us trust that He is preparing us for greatness, and let us walk confidently into the future He has planned for us. No matter what the future holds, you can rest assured that God is with you every step of the way. He is leading you into a new season, a new chapter, a new adventure, and as you step forward, trust that He is already at work behind the scenes, making all things new. So today, my friends, open your heart to God's transformative power. Trust that He is doing a new thing in your life, even if you cannot yet see it. Know that He is working in ways you cannot yet understand, but that are leading to something beautiful. Embrace the changes, trust in His plan, and let God transform your life into something extraordinary. Keep your eyes fixed on Him and be ready for the new thing He is about to do. Your best days are ahead of you, and with God leading the way, you are on the path to something truly amazing. Stay faithful, stay hopeful, and watch as God turns the ordinary into the extraordinary. Sometimes we look at our lives and wonder if we will ever be able to break free from the past, or if we will ever become the people God has called us to be. Yet we are reminded that God's power is not bound by time or circumstances. He is not limited by our human limitations. God specializes in turning the ordinary into the extraordinary. He specializes in making all things new. And while the transformation may not always come in the way we expect or at the pace we desire, we can be certain that God is always at work. Think about the story of the caterpillar. It starts as a small, seemingly insignificant creature, but through the process of transformation it becomes something entirely new, something beautiful, free, and capable of soaring. The transformation doesn't happen instantly. It takes time, patience, and sometimes a lot of struggles and changes. But when the butterfly emerges, it is a completely new creation. This is the same process God is doing in each one of us. The same is true in our spiritual lives. Just as a caterpillar undergoes an incredible transformation, God takes us through a process of growth and change. Sometimes it's uncomfortable, sometimes it's painful, but in the end, it leads to something far greater than we could ever have imagined. God is not in a hurry. He understands the need for the process, and He knows that every season of our life, whether we perceive it as a hardship or a blessing, is part of the journey He has designed for us. Every challenge, every difficulty, every triumph is part of the greater plan. Type Amen. If you are ready to forgive, trusting that God will handle what's been done to you. We may not always understand why we are facing certain situations, but God is working in us through them. His transformative power works through both the mountaintop experiences and the valley moments. He uses both the light and the darkness to shape us into the people He has destined us to be. And just like a potter shaping clay, He is gently molding us, knowing that every crack, every smooth curve, and every little detail matters in His plan. It's important to remember that God is not simply interested in changing our circumstances. He is focused on transforming our hearts and minds. The new thing God is doing is not just about external changes. It is about the internal work that will eventually overflow into every area of our lives. As we surrender ourselves to His process, He works on our hearts, renewing our minds and giving us new desires, new passions, and a renewed perspective on life. So many of us are waiting for the big breakthrough moment, the one thing that will change everything. But the truth is that the biggest change often starts small, deep within. It begins with a shift in our thinking, a renewed heart, and a new understanding of who God is and who we are in Him. It's in these small, seemingly insignificant moments that God is working the most. God doesn't need to wait for a grand moment to begin His work. He can start today, right where you are. Even in the messiness of life, He is already moving in your favor, preparing the way for the extraordinary. You may not see the full picture right now, but trust that God is already laying the foundation for the future He has for you. His timing is perfect, and He will not stop until He has completed the good work He has begun in you. As we embrace the new thing God is doing, let us also surrender the old things that no longer serve us. Whether it's old habits, toxic relationships, or past mistakes, God is calling us to release them and make room for His transformation. We cannot move forward if we are still holding on to what is behind us. God's new thing requires our participation, our faith, and our willingness to let go of the past and embrace what He is doing now. When we surrender to God's transformative work, we begin to see things from His perspective. We see His hand At work in our lives, in our relationships, in our work, and in our circumstances, we see that even the hard times have purpose and are part of the journey He is taking us on. We begin to understand that God does not waste a single moment in our lives, no matter how insignificant it may seem. Every moment is being used for our growth and His glory. God's transformative power isn't just for us to experience personally, but for us to share with others. As we are transformed by His grace, we become a reflection of that grace to those around us. Just as the light of Christ shines within us, so too should it shine through us. When we embrace the new thing God is doing in our lives, we become living testimonies of His power to bring about change, healing, and restoration. So, my friends, let today be the day that you embrace the transformative power of God. Let today be the day that you trust that He is doing something new in you, even when you can't see it yet. Surrender your fears, your doubts, and your expectations to Him, and allow Him to do what only He can do. Trust that He is at work, and that every step you take in faith brings you closer to the extraordinary life He has designed for you. God is not finished with you. His plans for you are greater than anything you can imagine, and His transformative power is working in you right now. Be encouraged today, knowing that the best is yet to come, and that God is making all things new in your life. Trust the process, embrace the change, and watch as God transforms the ordinary into the extraordinary. We can't shy away from the process of change, because it is through this very process that we become more like Christ. It's in the struggle, the stretching, and the refining that we begin to reflect His glory. When we allow God to take us through seasons of change, we allow Him to make us better, stronger, and more equipped for the future He has prepared for us. Just like a sculptor chiseling away at a block of marble, God is continually shaping us, one step at a time, into something beautiful. Transformation is not always immediate, and often it's not even a visible process. It happens inside, in the unseen places where God is working on our hearts, our minds, and our spirits. But that doesn't mean it's not happening. Just as a seed grows in the darkness of the soil before it ever breaks through the surface, God is working in the unseen, preparing us for the moment when the transformation will be visible to the world. And when it does break through, it will be undeniable. People will see the change in you, not because of anything you've done, but because of the power of God working within you. In the moments when you feel unsure or uncertain about the changes happening in your life, remember that God is a God of purpose. He doesn't do anything by accident, and He is always intentional about His plans for you. If you are walking through a season of change, trust that He is leading you to something greater. Even when the path feels unclear, or when you encounter obstacles along the way, trust that He is with you, guiding you every step of the way. When God transforms us, He does so with intention. He is not just changing the surface or altering our circumstances for the sake of change. He is doing a deep work within us, preparing us for something more significant than we can imagine. He is taking us from glory to glory, constantly refining and reshaping us to reflect His glory more fully. This kind of transformation is not just about external changes, but about internal shifts that align our hearts and minds with His will. We must learn to embrace change, even when it's difficult. It's easy to want to hold on to what's familiar and comfortable, but often God calls us to step out into the unknown. He calls us to trust that the changes He is bringing are for our good and His glory. God is not a God of stagnation. He is always moving, always working, always leading us forward. And when we trust Him in the process, we begin to see the beauty of what He is creating in us. In those moments of uncertainty, when change feels overwhelming or even scary, remember that God has already gone before you. He is preparing the way and clearing the path for you to walk. He has already made provision for every need, and He is orchestrating every detail of your life. You are not alone in this journey. He is with you, and He is actively working in you and through you. Take a moment today to reflect on how far God has already brought you. Think about the changes He has already made in your life. Look back at the seasons of transformation you've gone through and celebrate the growth you've experienced. Even if the changes haven't always been easy, they've been part of God's perfect plan to bring you closer to Him and closer to the person He created you to be. Now, as you look ahead, remember that God is doing a new thing in your life. He is preparing you for the next chapter, and the transformation He is bringing will be greater than anything you've experienced before. It might feel uncomfortable, but it will be worth it. Trust that He is in control and that His plans for you are good. God is doing something extraordinary in you. He is refining you, shaping you, and preparing you for the future He has designed. Embrace the changes He is bringing and trust that they will lead you to a place of greater purpose, peace, and fulfillment. As you move forward today, know that you are not just moving through the motions of life. You are being transformed by the hand of God. He is making you into something new, something more beautiful, something that reflects His glory. Don't be afraid of the changes ahead. Embrace them, knowing that they are part of the incredible transformation God is bringing into your life. God is turning the ordinary into the extraordinary, and you are a part of that incredible transformation. Be open to His work and trust that He is making all things new in your life. Keep your heart open to His leading and watch as He does something beautiful in you. Thanks for watching. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe the channel.